OpenAI just had an iPhone moment. So if you've been in the tech space for any length of time, you probably have heard like, oh, it's an iPhone moment. So this is a legendary black swan moment that basically every tech company is like hoping and praying for. And so let me unpack like what is an iPhone moment and why OpenAI's GPT-4o is an iPhone moment in my opinion. So an iPhone moment occurs when you have a confluence of several new technologies all packaged up in a great product launch. Those are the two requirements. So what do I mean by like confluence of new technologies? With the iPhone, it was the combination of new lithium battery technology, compute miniaturization, touchscreens, and 3G or mobile data. And so you take all of those, which Apple didn't invent any of those technologies, but what they did was they packaged them all up in a great product and then launched it with lots of fanfare and so on and so forth. Now, it's like, okay, so what happened? You know, they didn't invent smartphones. BlackBerries were around before then. They didn't even invent PDAs. Those had been around for a while. But really, it was that coherent vision and that building of a new ecosystem that really set Apple's launch of the iPhone apart. Now, of course, there were immediate, pretenders. Nokia and Sony and everyone has launched their own. Really, the only kind of main competitor is the Google Android kind of ecosystem. Now, of course, Android can run on multiple competitors, which has given it kind of a big advantage. But that's really the only reason that there is a coherent competitor, and that every other phone company is not just kind of making their own like little diddly phone, is because it is part of a larger ecosystem. And this is something that Microsoft never figured out when they tried like the Zune and the Windows Phone, is they never realized like we actually need to be part of a much larger ecosystem with iTunes and those sorts of things. Now, what led up to that? Because again, the iPhone did not exist in a vacuum. They didn't really invent any of those technologies. They were all prototyped elsewhere. But they had piloted the product with the iPod. So the iPod was kind of the lead up where they were experimenting with this miniaturization, this mobile technology, Bluetooth and Wi-Fi enabled handheld devices. And so then it was just a really natural, logical next step to say, hey, why don't we just add 3G to this? And, you basically have an iPod that now has 3G, and away you go. And you add in some new apps and those sorts of things. So what are the parallels here? One of the biggest parallels that I'm seeing is that OpenAI worked up to this. So having been a follower of OpenAI for many years, back when they were still doing robotics and simulation and before they even touched language models, they were feeling around saying, okay, what is the direction to AGI? Because they didn't even know what the direction to AGI was when they started. And so then the GPT technology came out. GPT-2 came out in 2019, February, over 5 years ago. It has been a crazy half a decade that I've been working with OpenAI technologies. And so then it's like, okay, this is a thing. So I imagine GPT-2 was kind of like when Apple discovered the iPod. They're like, okay, this is interesting, because remember, iTunes wouldn't exist without the iPod. Like this, so it's just like one natural, logical progression of products and services and technologies all stacked on like kind of feeling around in the darkness. So GPT-2, GPT-3, by the end of GPT-3, they're like, okay, this is really the way. Because, I mean, most of you watching this only became aware after GPT 3.5 with ChatGPT or GPT-4. Those of us on the inside were like, okay, this is clearly the direction towards AGI. The transformer architecture, maybe not language on its own, but of course now we're way beyond language models. These things are not, calling them LLMs is no longer an appropriate term. They're just transformers that transform tokens into tokens. So anyways, so on the Apple history, it was iPod to iPhone with iTunes and this gigantic ecosystem. OpenAI, and to Sam Altman's credit, being a Silicon Valley tech insider, VC dude for what, like 15 years now, maybe more. When did he first get to Y Combinator? Maybe it was 20 years ago. Anyways, he's studied this. He's been through this. He's studied Netflix. He's studied Amazon. He's studied Apple. So like he knows all of the patterns, all of the gameplays. So now that they have this new core thesis, right? Because Google, their core thesis was search. And so they're like, okay, so Google built an entire empire with the core thesis of search. And Apple has built a core thesis around the iPhone and, all the peripheral technologies around that, such as iTunes and various services. Last I checked, it's been a couple years, but I think iTunes was like 70% of Apple's revenue. So literally their entire hardware ecosystem is just a way to deliver you iTunes services. Likewise, Google, like their Android phone and Gmail, all of that is just a way to deliver you search and ads. So now OpenAI has their new core thesis. Their new core thesis is we need to deliver you GPT in as many formats as possible. GPT-4o, the new chat GPT with real-time speech and emotional emphasis and flirtatious female voice. Who saw that one coming, right? So anyways, all of these are just ways of delivering on their core thesis. And so what you're going to see is this whole ecosystem of applications and services and hardware popping up around this. And this is how OpenAI is going to become a $1 trillion company. Mark my words, OpenAI is going to be a $1 trillion company. And of course, Sam Altman said that this is the goal. He's even thrown around words like $100 trillion. I think that is becoming more within the realm of possibility. So what? I'm sure lots of people out there are like, yeah, great, okay, cool, OpenAI. Sam Altman is the new Steve Jobs, right? And he's definitely built that legend for himself. And I think that it is well earned. And from a safety perspective, is he going to fall down the rabbit hole of just becoming a typical corporatist where it's like, I've been watching movies from the 80s. They literally said out loud, greed is good, back in the 80s, which is just like the corporate ethos, which is the more money you make for the company, the more good you're doing for the world. And so my biggest fear is that, power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. And that this is pretty much what's going to happen to Sam, if not already. Now, one thing that I did notice is the same pattern here is playing out, which is Google is like, wait, me too, I'm going to do this too. In the same way that they've been following Apple for many years and have been playing second fiddle to Apple from a commercial standpoint. I know in terms of absolute numbers, there's more Google and more Android devices than iPhones, but from a commercial standpoint, Google has been playing second fiddle to Apple on the mobile and the cell phone game. And I think that Google with Astra and Gemini and Veo, I think they're probably going to be stuck playing second fiddle to OpenAI from here on out as well, because they really dropped the ball, and I don't think it's recoverable. And the part of the reason is just because, again, their core business thesis is search, and this categorically, and what I mean by this is GPT, categorically reshapes the incentive structures for the business. So anyways, that's kind of my take on this iPhone moment. What I did want to do as we close out is say that my book, Heavy Silver, I just finished proofreading it, and I've ordered the last set of proofs, and assuming that everything is solid, then yeah, it's going to go live here in the next few weeks. So just stay tuned on my channel here. You can also sign up for free on my Substack or for free on my Patreon if you want to get email notifications. For all of my paid subscribers, I'm going to make sure that you guys get a discount code, and I'm going to give you as much of a discount as I can. These platforms, it kind of depends on the platform. Anyways, I am super excited and super proud of this book. I've been working on it for 5 years, pretty much as long as I've been working on AI. It has 4 point of view characters. You can learn more about the book at heavysilver.net. I've got a nice little basic website set up, so it's just heavysilver.net, no hyphenations or anything. But yeah, take a look, and yeah, I guess that's all there is to say. I'm over the moon because I didn't know that this would ever be finished, let alone polished to this level. So just thank you to everyone who's been along the journey, and my editors and everyone else that helped me make Heavy Silver a thing. So cheers, have a good one.